The program you're about to see is made possible through the financial support of people like you. We hope you'll join the thousands of people who make our programming possible. Become an In the Life member by clicking on the Donate Now button on our website.
People's proverbial shoes.
Kenneth Cole, fashion designer, chairman of the board of the Foundation for AIDS Research, amfAR, and a social marketing pioneer since the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, discusses the stigma surrounding HIV with Regan Hofmann, editor-in-chief of Pause magazine, and the author of I Have Something to Tell You, a memoir which chronicles her life upon discovering she was HIV positive.
It's been 4 years almost since I told the world that I was living with HIV. And I think that the stigma around HIV is something that a lot of people can relate to, because a lot of people are dealing with something themselves, even if it's not HIV. And people tell me the most extraordinary things. And I don't know whether that's because they feel like if I can say HIV, they can say anything, or whether they're trying to commiserate and make me feel better, or sort of in this very compassionate quid pro quo, have me know something about them since I've shared my secret with them.
It's amazing. People today, the power of stigma is astounding today in this day and age. 25 years later into the virus, and people think, well, we've gotten beyond that. But your wife's example is, in fact, the case that we haven't. But there are certain courageous individuals who have enabled us to come pretty far, but we are so far from beyond that.
It's amazing, you know, people say to me, stigma is no longer a problem. And I think that people know how you get HIV and how you don't. They know you can hug someone and kiss someone and drink out of their soda maybe, but it's almost like we've become politically correct about it, and people know that they should say that they're not afraid of HIV or that it's okay that someone's positive. But deep inside, I think people have still this big aversion to it. As long as I make HIV something that happens to other people, I don't have to worry about it. As long as it's somebody else's disease, I can just, you know, not have to change my behavior in the bedroom. I don't have to embarrass myself by going to buy condoms in a drugstore. I think that even the stigma pervades into the medical community. I was in the hospital a year ago for a staph infection, and I requested some additional towels and paper, and the nurse stood at my doorway and threw them over my head into my room. She was afraid to come into my room. And people say to me, oh, the stigma's better. You know, stigma's killing people. It's absolutely killing people. It's preventing people from getting tested. It's preventing people from going to the doctor and from telling their families. And, you know, you've done so much since the very beginning of your career to fight stigma on a lot of issues, including HIV/AIDS.
So it's interesting because in 1985, did our first national ad campaign talking about the fact that nobody was talking about HIV. In effect, it was about stigma.
What was the line again?
It was for the future of our children. And
Right.
we had beautiful women and we had children who nobody, in effect, felt offended by.
Right.
And then years later, we did a campaign, we all have AIDS. If anyone's infected, essentially the message was, if anyone's infected, we're all affected and we're all living with the virus, some of us medically, some of us socially. But just before the campaign launched, it was, we all have AIDS. Individual members who were in the campaign who were photographed next to each other, such as Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu and Elton John and Elizabeth Taylor, people, very iconic individuals who have given so much of their identity and their resources over the years to talk about the virus. We reached out to several of these people, and we asked if they would agree several days in advance of the campaign to wear a shirt, be seen publicly with the message, I have AIDS. Nobody wanted to do it.
It's amazing. So they
petrified. And these were advocates. These are people who've committed so many of their their persona to this message. They didn't want to go first. They didn't want the tabloids to get a hold of that message. So here we are, and me, less so than you a bigger person than I, still to this day have made compromises because of the power and the devastation of stigma.
Which is why I asked you to be on our cover, and you did. And it's so powerful when people who are affected come together with people who are infected and, you know, blur those lines and take the stigma away. You know, I think the strangest thing for me when I was asked to come to Pause magazine was I felt like I really wasn't the face of HIV. And I looked at the numbers and I thought, okay, am I some fringe statistic? What right do I have to be talking about HIV as if I'm some representative, some emissary from the community? And since being at the magazine and just, daily on the website, which I have to spell because everyone thinks when I say that I work for POZ, they think that I work for a magazine about cats and dogs. So it's POZ. And it means, HIV positive and positive in mindset. And I see all these people and I realize that it's everybody, The disease has no clue. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't know whether you're gay or straight or bisexual or black or white or young or old, or it has no clue. It's a biological agent. I found, and I would love to know what you think, is it possible to destigmatize HIV?
Well, it takes people like Regan, and it takes people to tell their story. And it takes, by the way, I have something to tell you.
What is that?
This is Regan Hofmann's new book, and it's her story. It's Regan talking about how difficult it was for her, coming to terms with the fact that she had the virus, and then coming to terms with addressing it publicly. So, and it's the courage that you had in doing what you did, and others that make it easier for other people to say, well, they're pretty normal, and in fact, it could happen to anybody. You
call me brave. What you do is so brave, because on top of using your Kenneth Cole ad campaigns to raise awareness about HIV/AIDS, you also are the chairman of the board of this very powerful organization dedicated to research for AIDS. So how did that come to pass?
I did my AIDS campaign in 1985, and what we did felt bigger than what it was in the ordinary course. And we were saying, in effect, it wasn't what you stood for was maybe even more important than what you stood in. Mm-hmm. And then to be aware was maybe even more important than what you wear. And that, I think it culturally changed the nature of our business. It changed me personally in a profound way. And I was asked to join the board of amfAR in '87. And then they asked me to step up and be the vice chairman, then chairman 4 years ago. And what amfAR does is really important. And stigma is very powerful. But at the end of the day, a cure will only come from research.
Right.
That's what amfAR does.
Have you always been a rule breaker? How do you think about this in your head? I mean, you're breaking the rules to do good. But
I've always believed that usually the best solution is the most creative one. Mm-hmm. If we could creatively find a way to approach this crises without a sense of boundaries and do whatever one thinks they can do regardless of what they think they should do, that we can continue at amfAR to make extraordinary progress. Any regrets? Would you have done it differently? Would you have come out sooner? Would you have written the book earlier? Would you have...
If I knew I was going to be sitting here today with you, no, I think I suffered a lot longer than I needed to. And I think that's why I wanted to write the book, because I know there are a lot of people out there suffering and isolated, and they can go to POZ.com and they can connect with the community. And we have 85,000 people dating online on POZ.com. And they can do it privately, they can do it openly in the forums. The world is there for them, and there's a humongous community of people with HIV and people affected by it who will support them. And no one, thank God, in this age of technology has to be really isolated. I think that's my only regret, that I didn't find the courage sooner.
What's next?
What's next? I'm going to write a book about my dating life. No, I'm not sure. Like you, I'm going to work until I die to try to solve this sucker. I believe that it's possible to destigmatize HIV. I guess what's next is just keeping on until we resolve it.